This is a tutorial for one of my absolute favorite games, Western Legends, to include the main expansions as well as several of the mini expansions that are available for the game. I'd like to provide a quick review on setup and a refresher on gameplay for those familiar with the game that may not have played it in a while, in the hopes that it gets you up and running a bit quicker. With that, to set up the game, we're going to choose our desired game length, either 15, 20, or 25 points. We're going to add our end of game token to the end game space of our choice. In this case, we're going to do a 25-point game. We're going to add an event token to the gambler track, 5th space, the 5th space of the wanted track, the 5th space of the marshal track, as well as every 5th space of the legendary points track, up to but not including the end game space. I'm also going to be using an unofficial prospecting deck expansion. To set that up, we add 2 gold nuggets to each of the 3 mine spaces, and those are the only gold nuggets that are available for prospecting to begin the game, as well as a gold nugget, again, to each of every 5th space on the legendary point track. The prospecting deck comes with a series of event cards. You're going to choose 2 of those at random and add them to the rest of the prospecting deck, setting that aside. Then we're going to take a look at the item cards. Normal items are going to have a cost in the upper left-hand corner and are distinguished from legendary items in the sense that they do not. So we're going to start by looking at the legendary items. You're going to shuffle all legendary cards, and you're going to add 1 to each of the 3 spaces at the front row of the traveling trader stand. And then the rest are just going to remain here, and you're going to add this blocking card to the back to prevent people from seeing, I guess, the back of the cards, the legendary cards. Next, we're going to grab these randomizer cards, and we're going to shuffle the deck, and it kind of gives you just a basic outline here. But you're going to start drawing these cards. The first weapon and first mount need to go in the general store, and the second weapon and second mount you draw need to go in the trading post. That just ensures that there's one of each available at the respective locations. And then you're going to continue drawing items and adding the corresponding item deck stack until the general store has 12 total items and the trading post has 6 total items. And then any remaining items, you have space for 2 of them here in the back of the traveling trader standee, and then the rest can just be set kind of alongside. Next, we're going to add our cattle token stacks. The green stack goes in the Macedo's Point Ranch, blue goes in the Sunny Hills Ranch, and orange is going to go in the Buzzard Gulch Ranch. We're going to add our deed tokens to all of the main locations on the board. We've got 1 for each of the 3 mines, the 2 different rail stations, 1 for the trading post, 1 for each of the 3 saloons, 1 for each of the general stores, as well as the 3 ranches, the bank, cabaret, and doctor's office. We're going to take a look here at the story module. So if you want to use the original, you'll recall the base game came with this stack of cards, and you simply shuffle them and then divide it in 2, adding 1 stack to each of these spaces. When players achieve the objective on the card, they would add 1 of their story discs. You can only add 1 to each card, but up to the player count that's listed. Once that player count is met, the player who most recently contributed at the end of their turn would flip this over, resolve the event, and then typically I think it spawns bandits. But it has usually an effect that impacts players that contributed to it or penalizes those that didn't. But we're going to use the legendary story mode, which comes with this board overlay. And there are 2 sets of cards, 1 through 20. You'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, number 3. So there's another stack here. And you can mix and match these, but you just need to make sure that you have 1 of each number. There are pairs, so there's 2 3s, 2 5s, etc. Make sure you have 1 through 20, and then shuffle those, placing them here. The way that these work is there's some flavor text in the upper left corner, an ongoing effect in the bottom left, and then conditions here that are listed. These typically provide a story point when you contribute to them. So when you meet the objective, put your story disc here, and then if you gain a story point, you'll move up on this track. As you move up, the first space says that you'll move the sheriff up to 3 spaces, then you would spawn bandits, and in the last space, you're able to gain a gambler point, legendary point, marshal point, or wanted point, and then you return your disc to the start space, and so on and so forth. There are 3 tokens here. Just know that you can kind of ignore these until or unless the legendary story card refers to them. All right, we're going to go through the cards that are available in the game. To start, we've got the Traveling Trader deck. So to start the game, we have to resolve one of these to determine where he's going to start. In this case, it's the Spike's View area. And you can see the red shaded area indicates that we can place him in any spot within Spike's View of our choosing. So we will place him right down here. Here's the standee associated. Put him right there. Next, we have injury cards, train heist cards, event cards. Now, if you're playing with the Wild Bunch of Extras, it will come with these blue-backed event cards, special event cards. You'll shuffle these into the main event deck, and then there is a special or a unique event token that's associated with the unique event card, and the stack of those is right here, the blue ones, so you'll just find the matching symbol when you resolve those cards. To start the game, you need to resolve 1 event card for every 2 players, rounded up. So in a 3-player game, we would resolve 2 cards to start the game. We've also got high roller tokens, which will spawn at the various saloons and offer players a chance to play a high-stakes game of poker against an NPC. We've got Longhorn tokens, claim jumper tokens that will spawn at the various mines, and you'll need to fight them before you can carry out any further actions at the mine. We've got outlaw tokens that will likewise spawn around the board and be another NPC that you have a chance to fight. And then we'll look at bandits in a second. We've got our poker deck, and depending on the expansions that you've got, you may have duplicate cards, and you can mix and match. Just make sure that you've got 1 of each number and suit in the deck, and then put the others back in the box. We've also got deed cards that correspond to each of the deed tokens that we placed on the board, fight cards, bandit personality cards, and money. All right. We are going to place the train in its starting location at Spike's View Rail Station. We are going to choose a miniature for their sheriff and give him the brown base. He's placed at Dark Rock Sheriff's Office. And then we need to prepare our frontier on the Buzzard Gulch expansion and the Ante Up expansion. To do so, we're going to add 1 of these frontier tokens to each of the spaces with a pre-printed number already on the board. So you can see I've already done that, and then we're going to just set aside any extras. All right, so to set up each player, we're going to have them choose a mat in their preferred color, as well as several of the scoring tokens. So they're either going to be cubes, or in our case, we've got upgraded bullet bits. You're going to place 1 at the legendary point track. You're going to place 1 to the left of the gambler track, 1 on the starting space of the story track, and then we would put 1 next to our board that we will use when we either become marshal or wanted players. We're going to grab 1 ring, one ring in our color, and then also a wound token. Then we will grab the bet markers for the game of Pharaoh, and all of those things will be set by our player board. Just a quick lay of the land here. We've also got a spot for our money and a maximum of $120, as well as spots for 4 gold nuggets. Anything gained in excess of those numbers would need to be discarded. We've got a spot for our weapons and our mount, as well as 3 miscellaneous items here. If you gain more than one weapon or mount, they simply get stacked here, and at the beginning of your turn, you're going to choose the one you want to be active, and that needs to go on the top. You cannot gain more than 3 items, so some items do allow you to use them for some benefit. You could then discard it and then would have room to gain items once more. So then we're going to choose our starting character. The game recommends shuffling all of the character cards, dealing 2 to each player, having them choose one of their choice, and then we're going to, like in this case, we chose Bass Reeves. And before I forget, as you move up the legendary point track, you'll note that there's a 5 with a star here that corresponds to your player card. And when you reach the 5 space of the legendary point track, it unlocks a special and unique ability that only your character has. It'll either be an ongoing effect or a special action only you can use, and that's detailed right here. Like in this case, at the start of our turn, we always get to draw 1 extra poker card. Then it's got a bit of historic text here, as well as his starting location. So we put our chosen miniature with the colored base matching our player mat in the Dark Rock Sheriff's Office. And then we get a starting bonus of $10, 1 poker card, an upgraded revolver, and a marshal point without gaining the rewards. So we would place our token here on the first space of the marshal track. We do not gain the $20 that we normally would based on the bonus setup. All right. Then we're going to use the goal variant. There are 4 cards associated with each player. We're going to draw 3 of those randomly, and they provide kind of an objective to work towards. So when you achieve these, you will reveal it, and then you'll get to draw a legendary point token worth points at the end of the game. Just as an example, this says you can discard a poker card after winning a fight in town to complete this goal. So when you do, you've got this bag of tokens. Say I completed that, I get to draw a legendary token. I keep it to myself, but it's worth 4 points at the end of the game. If I complete my second one, I'm able to draw tokens equal to the number of completed objectives. So I would draw 2 more, and I would get to look at those and then keep the number of tokens equal to the objectives I've completed. So I have 3 to choose from. I've completed 2 objectives, so I would choose, well, the 4 and the 3 are the best. I would put this back. And then as you collect them, you'll just add them to your board. You can get up to 3 of these in the game. So that's the goal variant. Couple other finer points. If you gain any wounds to start the game, you'll move this down. We'll talk about wounds in a second. If your player starts in the general store or one of the saloons or trading posts, there's several spaces around them. You can choose to start in any of those spaces. The player that happens to be the most wanted is the start player and is going to take the start player token. And it's recommended that all wanted players sit next to one another. And then after we've kind of seated the whole board, the last thing we need to do is add bandits. So this is true both for setup and at any point during the game. If there's ever a space where there are already tokens, like there's an outlaw present or another player's character, bandits do not spawn there. So we're going to add 1 to each space because there aren't any other players there now. But should there have been a token here, we would not span a bandit. Each of the bandits have a kind of a personality, so I'm going to just mention that now. They have a number on the bottom of their standee. When we would fight them, we would, in addition to the normal benefits and rewards, draw one of these cards associated with the number. We're going to read that number. It's probably a bad example, but this was number 6. So we would read this. A player that defeats this bandit gains 1 cattle token from a ranch of their choice. Cool. Some of them are penalties, some of them are rewards. Just kind of add some flavor to each of the bandits. And then we're ready to go. So that concludes setup. To moving to gameplay. The beginning of each player's turn, they're going to move the train, and the train moves from the Spikes View rail station to Bandit Hideout C. Then we're going to move to the Buzzard Gulch board, Mountain Pass C, the rail station at Buzzard Gulch, Mountain Pass A, and then it's going to jump back to the main board. And these 2 spots are linked, so if I wanted to interact with the train here, Bandit Hideout A in Sunny Hills. If I was here, I would be able to attack the train here or interact with it. Likewise here in Bandit Hideout B, this corresponds to this location for the train, and Macedo's Point, Bandit Hideout A. From here, it's going to go all the way back to the beginning, and round it goes. So again, to start your turn, you have to move the train one space. Then you're going to choose between 3 options. You can draw 2 poker cards, you can draw $20, or you can choose 1 poker card and $10. And then you're going to perform 3 actions on your turn. One of the main actions is to move around the board. By default, you can move 2 spaces, unless you have a mount, which really highlights the importance of a mount. When you buy a mount, it will, in the upper right-hand corner, tell you how many spaces you can move. In this case, the Mustang allows you to move 4 spaces. While we're on the topic of movement, I just want to mention the Longhorn token, which reduces, when you have a Longhorn in your possession, your movement by 1 space. So I think it's helpful if you just set it right on top of the mount, and that'll remind you that your movement is reduced by 1. So in this example, 4 minus 1, we could move 3 spaces. All right. So besides moving, we'll kind of go through some of the main location actions that are available to you, but I'll also point out a lot of the poker cards have actions on them that you can choose from as well, and also reactions that do not cost an action. They're kind of conditional. You'll play them when you play a game of poker or when you fight another player, that sort of thing. So each of the locations, let's look at those. Each of the deeds that are on the board correspond to one of the deed cards that are in this stack, and anytime you're at one of those locations, you can buy the corresponding deed. So in this case, if we were at Spikes View Rail Station, we could buy this for $100, and it would provide a once per game benefit for just us. We could flip this over to move to the Spikes View Rail Station or the current location of the train from anywhere else on the board. Regardless of whether you use this, at the end of the game, the deeds are going to be worth legendary points. So in this case, it says it's worth 2 legendary points for each rail station you own. So if I owned each of the 2 rail stations, they would be worth 2 each for a total of 4. That's the claim action. Next, we will jump to the bank. The bank is the location that you can deposit any gold nuggets that you've acquired. For each gold nugget deposited, you'll gain $20 from the supply and a legendary point. The cabaret is a place you can spend money for legendary points. For every $30 spent, you'll gain a legendary point. So with our maximum of $120 that we can have in our possession, we could gain up to a total of 4 legendary points if we deposited all $120 or spent all $120. The doctor's office is a great opportunity to talk about wounds. The way that those work is as you gain wounds, either at startup or through fights or game effects, you'll move it to the right for each wound gained. And that has a couple of effects. At the end of the game, if you end your marker there, you'll lose legendary points based on where it's at. So -1, -2, and -3 points. It also reduces your hand size. So at the end of your turn, you would need to discard down, at the end of your turn, that is, you need to discard down to the hand size listed. If you were at the rightmost space and needed to gain a wound, instead, you would draw an injury card, which has both an immediate negative effect and an endgame negative effect. In this case, it says, busted leg, discard all but one of your miscellaneous items. Not great. This one doesn't have an end-of-game effect, but I know several do, so we'll just look at another one. So here's another one that says you have to play your poker cards face up and first in each fight. And the end of the game, it's -1 LP. So how do we get rid of those wounds? Well, we go to the doctor's office. We can spend $10, which will get rid of all of our wounds and any injury cards that we may have acquired. So it's a great way to get rid of them. And it's easy to forget, but for each wound that you lose in this way, so if we were at the rightmost space, we would have lost 3. 1, 2, 3, and we gain a poker card for each wound lost in this way. All right, next we're going to take a look at the frontier spaces. Any of the spaces that still have one of the tokens we placed, you can play poker cards equal to or greater than the sum of the two numbers that are listed here. So in this case, 11, 12 here. Let's say we discarded 12 points worth of poker cards. Then we draw and resolve this. So we would gain 2 legendary points and refill to our maximum hand size. Next, we'll look at the general store and trading post. They essentially work the same way, but the general store is available on the main board at the Dark Rock and Red Falls locations, and the trading post is available at the Buzzard Gulch location. So, on your turn, you can spend and upgrade as many things as you want at a given location. So if we're at one of the general store locations, we could buy this Peacekeeper. The cost is $50, and you saw that there's a number of Peacekeeper cards, but the back of each is unique. So $50 to get it, and this plus here means that it's upgradable. And so if we paid another $50 to upgrade it, then you flip it over, and it has a unique name, in this case Judge, and it's worth 2 legendary points at the end of the game. The Traveling Trader, on the other hand, kind of jumps around the board. If you happen to be in his space, you have access to everything in his stand. All legendary items are worth cost $40. And anytime, I should mention, anytime you gain a legendary item, you do not draw it from one of the face-up cards. You instead take it off the top of the legendary item stack. And then, as you'll remember, we also have access then to any of the cards that were left over from setup through the Traveling Trader. Once you're done interacting with him, then you draw one of the new, draw a new Traveling Trader card, and he'll jump to a new space. All right, next is mines. So there are 3 mines on the board, and remember, as part of this variant, you can only prospect as many gold nuggets as happen to be there, but you're going to roll both dice and gain the result. So the money symbol is worth $10. There's our gold nugget. We've got, this would mean you get to roll that die a second time and gain $10. And then there is a gravel, which means you get nothing. The mountain pass is indicated by these 2 arrows, and there's one on each side of the boards. So this allows you to, when you start from a location on either side, you can spend 1 entire move action, and you would lose any excess move points that you have, but 1 entire move action to move from one side to the other. There's a spot here from C to C and A to A, so those 2 spots. But it takes your entire move action to do it. Any excess movement is lost. Next, we're going to talk about cattle. You can acquire a cattle token from any of the ranches that costs an action, and then when you get it, you can look at it. So this would be worth a gold nugget when delivered. You can keep that secret, but you are able to look at it. And where you deliver it is going to depend on whether you're looking to get wanted points or marshal points. To deliver it to an opposite colored ranch is called rustle. That will gain you the benefit on the bottom of the token, as well as a wanted point. By contrast, if you were to deliver it to a rail station, you would gain the benefit on the token plus a marshal point. They can also be delivered to the outlaw camp in the Buzzard Gulch. This is a corner area down here. And that will also gain you a wanted point, much like delivering to an opposite colored ranch. It's a good time to probably mention that marshal players can become wanted at any point, but wanted players cannot become marshal. They would first need to be arrested or be a neutral player and then could choose to become marshal. Longhorns work a little bit different. We already talked about them reducing your movement. All Longhorns are going to get you 1 legendary point and $30 when delivered, and they can be delivered at any of those locations, any of the 3 ranches, either of the rail stations, or the outlaw camp. And delivering any cattle never costs an action. That's an automatic, and then you just simply discard the token. The rail station, there's one of each, of course. The unique action there is that you can pay $10 to move from one board to the other, and When you do that, you also gain a free move action. So in one action, you pay $10, move to the opposite board, and then you can continue moving with whatever movement points you have. The saloon allows you to play some poker or faro. Any other players that happen to be at that town can choose to join you. If they're playing poker, each player that wants to play antes in $10. The saloon contributes $50. If no other players are available or choose not to play, you can always play against the dealer, in which case the dealer would draw 4 cards, and then we're going to do a flop of 3 cards, and each player in the game is going to contribute 2 cards to make the best poker hand they can. If the active player wins, they gain a gambler point or a legendary point plus the pot. If the non-active player wins, they gain a gambler point in the pot, and any losing players gain a poker card. Faro, any players that choose to join Faro gain the active player $10. So they would take $10 for any other players that join, not per each player, but any number of players. The way Faro works is you're going to place bet markers out on these cards. First, we're going to draw 4 fight cards. We're going to reveal 3 of them, and then players can place their bet markers on the cards. We know we have a 3, an 8, and a queen. You cannot place bets in excess of the money you have in your possession. So you have to have the money to do so. And then we'll place them on, let's say, the 3 and the queen. Then all 4 cards get shuffled. And the first card, you're going to draw the first card. Any bets on that card lose. And you would have to pay money to the supply based on that. The second card will be drawn, and that pays 1-to-1. So anybody that had a bet on 8 would get that value from the supply. At this point, players can either choose to stay in or remove their bet markers. Starting with the player to the left of the active player, players will make that designation. Once everybody's decided to either remove their bet markers or stay in, the third card is drawn. That pays 3-to-1. So in this case, we would gain $60 from the supply, and then any bets on the final card lose. So we would pay $10. So that's Faro in a nutshell. Next, we have the train. Wherever the train happens to be located, you can fight the guard by drawing one of these cards. It'll tell you how many fight cards are drawn. Remember, those are the fight cards. And then just kind of how it works. If the player wins or the player loses, what's at stake. You can always choose to work at any location. If you've got nothing else to do or you're hard up on cash, you can simply choose to work to gain $10. And let's see. At the end of the round, you want to make sure that, especially if you're wanted, you're going to gain points equal to the row that you're in. So 1, 2, or 3 based on the row. Whereas marshals tend to gain legendary points as they move up the track. And then end of game points, end of game points, depending on the row that they're in. Another thing I want to mention quickly is the risk die. You can choose a benefit of $10, a poker card, or to move 1 extra space. If you really need one of those things, you just need an extra $10 to do an action. You need 1 extra space to get where you want to go. You can choose that, but then you have to roll the risk die. You can do that once per turn. And this is another way you can gain wounds. There's a face with 2 wounds. There is a face with, I think, 2 faces with 1 wound. There's 2 faces with story points, and then there's 1 with a wound and story points. Remember, when you gain story points for any reason, you're going to move up on this track. So that's always an option once per turn. I'll just mention the Man in Black real quick for 2-player variants. There's this deck of Man in Black cards. He starts at the Spikes View rail station. After all other players have gone, the other 2 players, you'll draw one of these cards and resolve it. He always draws 3 fight cards. He's always going to resolve the highest card, whereas any other NPC fights, the non-active player can choose the card that they want. Doesn't always necessarily have to be the highest card. And then just a couple other notes. If you move into a space with a claim jumper, outlaw, or bandit, you do not have to spend an action to fight them. As soon as you move into their space, it's mandatory that you fight them. Generally speaking, it'll tell you how many fight cards you need to draw to fight the train, the claim jumper, or the outlaw. Bandits always use 2 cards. And then there's some great references in the rules on pages 56 and 57 about NPC fights and player fights and how to resolve those. Last thing I'll say is just scoring. So wherever you end up on the legendary point track, to that you're going to add legendary points from any upgraded mounts or weapons that you have. You're going to gain an LP for every $60 you have rounded down. You're going to lose one for each wound that I mentioned, or any injury cards that you happen to possess. You're going to add to it any legendary tokens that you happen to have. Again, these are the legendary tokens. You can have up to 3 of those. The most wanted player is going to gain 3 LP. All other wanted players gain 1. Martial players gain LP based on where they are on the martial track. The player who moved furthest on the gambler track gains an LP. And then deeds. Any deeds that you've got that gain you LP. And the player with the most points wins. I think that's it. Hope this was helpful. Have fun.